ConvoCourses.com, and my wife is asking me questions from people who might be on the outside looking into this industry of cybersecurity and IT, and we're just kind of doing this in a little bit of a different way. So what's the next question?
Next question is, how do you deal or handle the difficult customers?
Very, very good question. This is a really good question that's got me a lot of good jobs. Dealing with difficult customers, difficult clients is one of the hardest things about cybersecurity. If you are a firewall guy, if you're a network guy, and that's all you do in the background is fix stuff, and you don't have to really interact with the customer-facing part of your organization. If you're not a consultant directly, typically you're just in the background fixing stuff when it breaks or maintaining things. But if you're customer facing, that means you deliver a product or service directly to a client. That is what really separates real professionals and consultants from, the other side of this industry. And not saying that one is good or one is bad, it's a huge gap between who can handle people and who cannot. So how do I deal with customers, difficult customers? Once I explain this to you, it's going to make a lot of sense. You'll realize other customer-facing organizations who you've talked to, who've convinced you of the same thing I'm about to tell you. The way you do it, express to them that you're on their team. That's how you do it. If they know that you're fighting for them and that you're on their side, it's not you against them, it's you two against the world. And you're on their team. You're there to serve them. That right there is the main perspective that you need to have when you're dealing with difficult customers. Give you an example. You have a customer who has a password issue. They have this huge password issue in their organization, and they're upset because you, the assessor, is telling them, hey, you guys have to change this password. And they're upset because it's like, we've been doing this for 15 years. Like, why are we going to change it? It's going to take us $100,000 to fix this in 3 years, and you guys are telling us we need to do it now. And see the stress because it's dealing with people, time, money, and maybe it wasn't in their budget to fix it to begin with. The way you approach it is say that you have discovered, telling them the truth basically. You're not trying to sugarcoat it, or it's not marketing. You're telling them, hey, we did a scan. We discovered that we see that this is a shortcoming in the network. You don't say your net. See the language? You don't say your network. You can say the network, or you can say our. Well, our is kind of too much if you just met them, right? But you could say, we can see this in the network. Like, we see this issue, and one of the problems that you might have is if you had malware on the network, it might be able to exploit these things here. What do you want us to do? Like, this is outside of our budget. It's going to take way too much time. And you say, yeah, hey, I'm with you. I understand what you're saying. Like, this is going to take time, but we're just going to work together and try to get this done in a certain amount of time. And then you give them options. You say, obviously we can't fix it right now this minute. This is not an overnight thing, but what are our options? And some of the options that you have is an action plan. An action plan is it's breaking down plan of action and milestones, meaning you have a plan to get from here to there to fix those things. You have a plan that starts off with, okay, we have to figure out what systems, we're going to analyze all the systems that have this issue. And then the next thing we're going to do is see which ones we can fix right now. There might be some we can't. And then the next step, so you tell them, hey, we can do an action plan. That's one of the things we can do. Another thing we can do is have an exception. Like, our organization can say, listen, we know that there's a risk, but here are other things that we're doing that offset this particular risk. Like, we're using multi-factor authentication, for example, or we're using this over here, or it's only on these systems, and those systems are behind the firewall and they don't have access to the internet. Those are kinds of the things that you could do to where you don't have to fix those things immediately. So you can offer them other options, such as plan of actions to fix it in the future, and a risk acceptance, where you're saying, we know the risk, however, here's all these other compensating controls that we have. And another thing you can do is try to figure out what their internal organization's processes are. So you have to work with them as a team. You're a part of their team, and they need to understand that. What you don't want to do is say, you guys need to fix this. Look at this. This is horrible. Like, this is gonna get you hacked, like, and stress them out even further. That's not how I do it. I've seen some people do that with different levels of effect. Sometimes it just, all you do is panic the customer and make them freak out even more. My method is to say, hey, listen, we're gonna fix this. I'm with you. What can you do right now? Let's see what we can do. Give them options. Once they choose an option, start working towards that path with them. You're on their team. That's one of the ways that I deal with difficult customers. Another thing that I do is stay calm. Panicking is not going to help. If I panic with them, it's going to make them panic more. And so you don't want to do that. So I don't panic. I let them know I'm on their team. And you can actually flat out say, listen, I'm with you. I'm on your team. Whatever we need to do, let's march towards that. And you want to fight for them. If another organization is saying, well, you guys have to do this and do that, and you just calmly say, listen, we're doing that. We're working towards it. We have an action plan right here. We have an action plan. If you're talking to this other organization, it's we, right? So that's what I do to deal with difficult customers. It's not a difficult customer, it's a difficult situation, and you're trying to calm them down. That's how I see it.
Has it ever happened that you were not able to meet the deadline?
All the time. Yeah. So that's why you have action plans. When you are not able to meet a deadline, a good example of that is if you do vulnerability scans. Vulnerability scans, often you'll have different tiers and different priorities of vulnerabilities. For example, you might have a critical, a high, a medium, and a low, right? And each one of those has a different time frame that you're supposed to remediate or fix those vulnerabilities. And a vulnerability might be that your system needs a patch, a Microsoft patch of some sort. And the organization, it's a critical patch, which means it's supposed to be fixed in a week, right? In 7 days to 10 days or something like that. And your organization that you're working with, they can't meet that, because if they fix the patch, it breaks the system. Like, it will no longer function. It will no longer allow users to access the back end of it or whatever. So in those cases, you might break the time frame that you're supposed to fix it. And so what you do is what's called an action plan. It's a document that states, here's the problem, here's why we can't fix it, the justification of why you can't fix it, here's the compensating controls. Yes, we can't fix it, however, we have the firewall in place, we're watching it, we're monitoring the system, we have all the other systems are patched around it, and we've limited how many people can get on the system, right? You have compensating controls to say, hey, yes, we have this issue, however, all these other things are in place. And then another thing you do is establish when you're going to fix it. We're going to do X first, then we're going to do B, and then finally we're going to do this one, and then we're going to test it and make sure that it's fixed in this other timeline. So the action plan makes it so that you're going to fix it in 2 or 3 months. So that's what you do with those. Any other questions?
Congrats, Bruce. That was good.
Besides the action plan, you can do something that's not often talked about, but you can do a risk acceptance. And that's where the organization says, look, we can't fix it on time. We can't really do a plan of action because we don't know when we can fix it. We have to accept the risk. But accepting the risk doesn't mean that you just throw your hands up and say, oh, well, we forget. That's it. We can't. There's nothing we can do. An acceptance of risk is a risk response where your organization is saying, we can't fix it right now. We don't know when it's going to be fixed. However, we have all these other controls in place that make it so that the risk is limited, and we're willing to accept that limited risk.
Last question.
Okay.
If the client is already angry during the call, how do you react or respond to the client?
One thing you don't want to do is throw gasoline on the fire. That means like you respond angry back. You have to understand, kind of see it from their perspective why they're angry. You don't have to agree with their anger or their approach or anything like that, but to remain professional, especially if you're a consultant and you're there to kind of put the fires out or help them put the fires out, you don't want to throw more gasoline on the fire that you're trying to put out. So don't overreact, don't respond in an angry way. Listen to what they're saying and try to see things from their perspective. And a lot of times when the customer is angry and then you repeat back and say you understand, like you need to understand them. That's why you have to listen to them. Listen to what their grievances are and say, listen, I understand now why you're upset. That does make sense. And then start to offer solutions if you can. And if you can't offer solutions, say, listen, give me some time. Let me see what I can do. Let me go back and see what I can do for you. Like, I see where you're coming from, so I'm going to go back to my leadership and see if we can fix this, because we want to keep you as a customer. We want, if they're mad at you, like they might be mad at your organization, and that's when you say, listen, let me see if I can fix this for you. You know, that's not to say that you just do whatever they say or the customer's always right. They're not. If there's a way that you can make it right, if there's a way that you can fix it, tell them, hey, I'm going to go back and see if I can get some solutions for you. I'm going to do some homework on my end, right? You don't want to make them more angry by attacking them back or yelling or whatever. That's gasoline on the fire. You don't want to make fake promises to them, because your immediate impulse is to try to please them and try to give them, okay, well, what if I do this? And make them all these false promises that you can't keep. Don't do that. But just if you have solutions on the spot that you can do, try to do those. But if you can't, tell them, hey, I'm going to go back to my leadership and see if I can do anything about this. And if they're really mad, then you probably want to bring your boss on. You want to probably bring your leadership on, and then all of you listen to the conversation. Like, sometimes it's outside of your pay grade, and it's best to just be quiet and say, hey, let me bring my boss on. Let's do another meeting. I'm going to bring my boss on. He's going to listen, or she's going to listen to what you have to say and see if we can do anything. So I'm doing a course with a couple of other trainers that we have a kind of a mock style session where you are a new hire and we're treating you like you have the job, and we're putting you through difficult situations, like a situation where the customer's upset or they don't understand something. And it's teaching two different things that you need as an information system security officer or as a cybersecurity person as a whole. It's teaching you, number one, what to do in risk management framework. It's walking you through the process of how it looks in real time and in real life, taken from real examples. But another thing it does that I haven't seen in any other course is teaches you how to talk to people, how to deal with difficult customers, how to communicate. And that's a super important part of our job. This new course, it's taken us a while to develop. We're still doing it, but I would like to maybe release a sample at some point, but it's not out yet, so it's coming.